Excited to have you here. Welcome to the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities Self Advocate Discussion Series. For those that don't know me, I am Chris Hendricks, the Policy Education Coordinator for the Council. On behalf of the Council, thank you so much. This discussion series is a place for North Carolina self-advocates to gather and engage with each other, to talk about things that affect our lives as people experiencing life with IDD, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and other disabilities. And we want this time together to be used to get to know each other and to get to know the council, where I and other individuals with IDD are leaders, colleagues, and most importantly, we're valued for our input because we are who we are. And people with disabilities should always be valued like that. And this discussion series will demonstrate why and how. This month's one of my favorite topics. We're going to celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month, NDEAM for short. The title is a bit self-explanatory. We're talking about employment and income earning opportunities for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we will be celebrating the employment journey of persons with IDD, and we'll also go over some of the seen and unseen benefits as an employer receives from taking a chance on the real value of hiring a person with a disability. Before we get to work, we're going to continue our tradition of relaxing into the topic with our jokes of the day, which I can only hope our my colleague Philip Woodward, who's with us today, appreciates these jokes that we've chosen. Okay, so I tried to tell a joke over Zoom the other day, and y'all, I'm sorry, it wasn't even remotely funny. Yes, I got a chuckle. Woo! All right, ready? Elevator jokes are my favorite because they work on so many levels. But okay. Now let's continue. Every October, we observe National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Each year, the U.S. Department of Labor takes a month to celebrate persons with disabilities and their contribution to the workforce, past, present, and future. I personally look forward to the day when we are so included that we no longer need a month to celebrate these things. But for now, we get to take this month to acknowledge our contributions to the workforce. And whether you know it or not, persons with disabilities bring a lot to the table for employers who know where and how to look for candidates. We'll get into some of the specifics shortly, but for once, you won't hear me talk too much early on, because we're going to start things off with a video to help explain what NDEAM is all about, much better than I could explain it myself. For days from around the world. And now it appears that after a request from President Biden,
workers with disabilities. We also reaffirm our commitment to ensuring all Americans, including Americans with disabilities, can put their skills and talents to work, reflecting the importance of ensuring disabled people have equal opportunity to.
This is Melissa. Please forgive me. I'm hoping that you were able to see and hear the video, but I did not turn on the closed captioning. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to start that over. Here we go.
Every day, people with disabilities can and do add value to America's workplaces and economy. Each October, during National Disability Employment Awareness Month, or NDEAM, we celebrate the contributions of these workers with disabilities. We also reaffirm our commitment to ensuring all Americans, including Americans with disabilities, can put their skills and talents to work, reflecting the importance of ensuring disabled people have equal opportunity to prepare for and succeed in employment. The theme for NDEAM 2023 is Advancing Access and Equity. Indeed, a disability inclusive workforce is a strong workforce. And today, more and more leading employers across the US are realizing this and reaping clear bottom line benefits as a result. Specifically, companies identified as leaders in disability inclusion had, on average, over a 4-year period, 28% higher revenue, double the net income, and 30% higher economic profit margins than their counterparts. NDEAM is an annual opportunity to educate people about these benefits, celebrate progress made, and most importantly, commit to building a stronger, more equitable, and inclusive workforce going forward. It is led by the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy, or ODEP. Each year, ODEP works closely with its partner organizations, including those representing employers, people with disabilities and their families, and government agencies, to develop a theme and assist organizations in participating. This includes developing and distributing an annual poster. But the real spirit of NDEAM lies at the grassroots level, with activities and observances in workplaces and communities across the country. Employers of all sizes and in all industries are encouraged to take part, as are educators and youth service professionals, business associations, labor unions, and disability advocacy organizations. How can your organization take part? There are lots of ways. Visit dol.gov/NDEAM for inspiration. There, you'll find concrete ideas for event planning and resources to help you get started. And while on the site, be sure to order your free NDEAM poster, which is available in both English and Spanish. The ODEP-funded Campaign for Disability Employment also offers a variety of resources that can help in planning NDEAM activities, including videos and discussion guides. To access them, visit whatcanyoudocampaign.org. However you choose to participate, NDEAM is a great time to celebrate and educate. It's a time to reflect and reaffirm. It's a time to emphasize the importance of ensuring all Americans can gain skills and put them to work for the good of themselves, their families, their communities, and our nation's economy.
Now that we've gone through that video, I'll pass it on to my colleague, Melissa, for the next part. Whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. So this does not happen very often, but we have the opportunity for this topic to have our main facilitator, Chris Hendricks, our new colleague here at the Council on Developmental Disabilities. Forgive me, I am supposed to read from this slide. So let me share that slide with you really quick. So Chris Hendricks is the Council's Policy Education Coordinator for the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities. He focuses on developing relationships and utilizing self-advocacy as a core aspect of systems change to better the lives of persons with IDD across North Carolina. He has a background in communication and a degree in exercise sports science from Elon University. He's also a professional recording artist and a family man to his partner Heather and his daughter Fern. So thank you very much, and welcome, Chris, as a presenter speaker at your own self-advocate discussion series event. And I'm going to ask you a few questions before I turn it back over to you to interview our real guest.
Perfectly put, Melissa. Go ahead.
All right. So, Chris, why is this topic important to you? Why is the topic of employment important to you?
Thank you for that question, Melissa. One of the many reasons that I joined the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities was my passion for employment, actually. The council's executive director, Tally Wells, saw me speak to the value of people with IDD at a conference on employment, actually. This topic is so important to me because employment and income earning opportunities for people with disabilities comes down to value. And unfortunately, today, one of the ways we determine value is a paycheck. I wish it weren't so, but I personally believe that any person with intellectual and other developmental disabilities have income earning opportunity potential. It all starts with our community seeing the value in ourselves to start and each other. The fact of the matter is that there are some things that people born with IDD bring to the table that other populations don't. And I want our world to see that sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing your perspective. Next, tell us about the organization you are with and what they do.
Well, you may know some of this better than most, but it's my great joy to be a member of the staff to the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities. And overall, through advocacy, capacity building, and systems change, the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities, or NCCDD, as one of our many acronyms, improves the opportunities for over 180,000 North Carolinians with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to lead the life of their choosing. Specifically, I specialize in self-advocacy, networking, and relationship building between the council and the leaders and decision makers in our state, such as senators and representatives, as well as outside organizations that empower and serve our IDD community.
Thank you, Chris. That's great. Next, we're going to learn something about your personal journey. So give us a walkthrough of some of your employment journey.
Okay, so this is quite a journey, quite a roller coaster. My journey was a wild ride, to say the least, but through the ups and downs, it's all been very worth it, as you know. My employment really began in the hospital. Since I spent so much time in them growing up, I've had 16 or 17 operations growing up. And so I actually started as an administrative assistant to my neurologist over the summers. I worked with him for 4 summers total while on break from college at Elon University. And before graduating, I applied to be a part of the Disney College program, because who wants to grow up when you don't have to? And so I got paid while working at the happiest place on earth most of the time. And I learned about hospitality and what it really means to take care of a person and see a value in a person during that time. And I had that job for 2 years. All the while, I was encouraged by my colleagues to pursue a career in speaking and the arts, specifically music. I eventually toured as a professional recording artist and spoke at educational institutions and companies across the country and Europe. I've also been a certified personal trainer, a successful insurance agent right before I began my journey here. And I even had a stint at Best Buy in my early 20s. And I got that job just by walking in the door and telling people I already worked there. I didn't even have a proper resume. I just walked up to every single employee and shook their hand and introduced myself until the manager came out and said, "What is this guy doing here? Why does he think he already has a job?" and they gave me an interview. So my approach has been unconventional, to say the least, but we are an unconventional population, and so I encourage us to be unconventional in this approach. My communication skills eventually got me the opportunity here at the council, and where I hope to continue to inspire systems change from the inside out and help people like myself see the value that they've always had, that they were born with.
Thank you, Chris. That was an interesting journey story. I liked some parts more than others. Was there ever a time when you thought that you couldn't be employed or you couldn't get a job?
Believe it or not, the answer is yes. And I wish it weren't true, but while in high school, I applied for multiple jobs in retail over the summers, particularly in the the fashion and clothing industries. When I was a high school senior, I remember one specific incident that really had a profound effect on me. I won't say the name of the store, but I applied for a job there feeling really confident, as I had already been employed previously and I had experience. And I introduced myself to everyone in the store, similar to my Best Buy story, and I eventually landed an interview that I thought went really well. I returned to the store every few days after that to see if they had made a decision. I eventually saw a sign in the store that said, "Welcome to our new associate," and it wasn't me. I went back to the manager who interviewed me to get some feedback, and the manager dodged the question and said something about more experience being needed. And that's a typical response from someone, and it's understandable because I was in high school, right? Who doesn't need more experience at that time? But something didn't really sit right with me. So I went back the next day to ask again. And after some more poking and prodding, the manager eventually said, "Look, we just don't hire people like you. Image matters in places like this, and you don't fit our brand of cool." And the truth of the matter is that I went home and cried in secret for a week.
Chris, that would have hurt anybody. I'm sorry you had to experience that. But then again, I'm sure that if I know you, you're just say it made you the strong person, help make you the strong person that you are now, and help you land in the spots that you're in now. So what is your advice to people with disabilities who have had the same thought or a similar experience?
That's a great question, Melissa. And to that, I'll say this. Just because some advice sounds cliche doesn't mean it's not true. So here comes my cliche advice. One man's opinion of you does not a life make. We may have barriers, but we, particularly as a population of persons with IDD, always find ways to overcome them every single day. The internet is a powerful tool. Use it to find examples of people in similar circumstances who have found a way forward. And I like to say that our population is never average, so why seek average employment? Average employment isn't always the right fit. Maybe that's because we're not average. We live outside the box, so let's look outside the box. And probably the most important piece of advice to me, focus on qualities that you do have as a person with IDD. You are outside the box. That means that you can adapt to situations if given the right tools. You are loyal, and there's data that backs that up. We are the most loyal employees out there as far as population is concerned. And we tend to appreciate opportunities, and we inspire others to do the same. And if you can't find a path forward, work together with your fellow self-advocates, and let's make one. That's one of the purposes of this self-advocate discussion series, is if we can continue to have conversations like this, it will inspire ideas that create change.
And Chris, those are inspiring words. Well, is there anything else you'd like to tell us that you haven't shared yet?
Sure will. Employment and income earning are not the same, but they are both options to consider. Everything around you that exists all started with an idea. So limitations or not, your thoughts are powerful things. So keep them in mind as you continue to celebrate Indeem this month and beyond, and continue to celebrate yourself. It's bound to lead to great things. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chris. I'm glad to have you on our staff, and I'm glad I had this opportunity to learn more about you here at the Self Advocate Discussion Series. So now it's your turn, and I'm going to leave it up to you to introduce our guest speaker.
If you insist, you were such a great interviewer, I think I should give you my job. But in the meantime, thank you. And I hope that what I shared was informative. So now allow me to introduce someone who might be even more passionate about employment than me, and you'll hear why when he shares his background. He is an employer, a business owner, an author, a speaker, a self-advocate, and a very good friend, I'm glad to say. Please give a warm self-advocate welcome to the co-founder and president of Ablr 360, John Samual. John, thanks for being here with us today, man.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's I always love hearing you speak and share your story, and I learn something each time, and I'm just so thankful for you to invite me here today.
Absolutely. We're
Mhm.
so excited to learn from you as you've
Well,
done so many things and seen this from so many different angles. So I'll start with an easy one. Why don't you share with us why this topic of employment for persons with disabilities and celebrating employment is so important to you?
no, thank you for that. Yeah, employment is something that I find my purpose in, right? Helping people find employment, because it was something that I struggled with. But when I think about it, as a kid, I grew up with privilege. I grew up with two parents who gave me a great education, and the question of what do you want to be when you grow up came up a lot. And you know, having a job was never in question, right? I saw my parents who worked, and I never thought employment would be an issue for me. I just thought, of course, I'm going to have a job. I'm going to have a well-paying job. It was just these were things I assumed were going to happen for me. And when I was in college, I was diagnosed with a degenerating eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa, and I was told I was going blind. And as a young person at that time, it was devastating. And the first things that went through my mind were, what girl wants to be with the guy who can't see? And what kind of job could I have if I'm blind? And where could I live if I couldn't drive? And these questions and many more constantly consumed me. But going back to that job piece, I was like, what job could I have? I ended up failing out of college, but found a loophole at NC State and was able to get back into school and graduate. And, looking for a job, the biggest barrier I started facing was transportation. I couldn't drive. I couldn't get around. And I thought my career was going to be over. And so I ended up moving out to India, and because I could get a car and driver out there and start working. But that drive for employment was something I really was determined to have. It was something I wanted to have. But when I went to India, I was making $500 a month. And I thought that would be the only type of career I could have. And, when I was looking at my friends in the US who were, coming out of college making significantly more than me, I was wondering, I was like, maybe my future is only here. But I decided to come back home to the US, and I got a job with the city of New York in Manhattan, and I was living paycheck to paycheck. And again, I just looked at my friends around me, and they had different career trajectories. And the only difference was that I had a visual impairment and they didn't. And that's at least what I thought was the only difference. And I didn't understand, why could I be living this lifestyle while my friends had a different career trajectory. And that kind of all changed when I had the opportunity to move out to Africa and start a telecom infrastructure company. And the person who asked me to come out there, he knew I had some sort of eye condition, but he took a chance on me. He trusted me and believed I had the skills that were needed to do this. But when the investors of the company found out that I couldn't see, they said, no way. And I pleaded with them, and they said, okay, we'll give you 6 months and we'll go our separate ways. And I left Manhattan with a $20,000 investment and moved to Cameroon to start this company from scratch. And I had immediate success. And that $20,000 turned into $12 million in revenue and 2.4 million in profit in just 14 months. And at that point, I realized I can do this, no matter whatever you want to call it, a disability, condition, whatever it was. I had the skills that were needed to do this. But I had to change my own perception of what my abilities were. And that was the first time I was able to start to save money and to really see the power of what income can do for me, and that confidence it gave me, that financial independence. And later on in my life, I struggled. As I was disclosing, I wasn't able to self-advocate for myself. I still kept my vision loss a secret, and I struggled to find a job. And I realized that, I found a lot of my own self-worth in my employment. I found a lot of myself confidence in my financial independence. And, you know, and once I was able to kind of regain that a couple of years ago, 6 years ago, when I joined LCI, I realized these feelings I had, I wanted to share with others. And that's what's been driving me, is that I know, again, I don't know if it's the right way to feel, but I want people to have that financial independence. I want people to have that confidence that comes in that question, what do you do? And I wanted to help make sure that if somebody wants to work and somebody wants to have, employment, we should be able to remove those barriers for them.
See, Melissa, I told you he was perfect for today. Let me follow up by saying, by stating the obvious. So what is it that you and your organization do now?
So at Ablr, I joined LCI 6 years ago. And for those of you who don't know, LCI is the largest employer of people who are blind in the country. And they're located right in RTP in North Carolina. And when I met with the president at the time of the organization, he was talking about wanting to create technology-based jobs and upward mobility for people who are blind in these tech-related fields. We live in this amazing location where tech companies, biotech, all this, the state of, the future of work is right here in our backyard. And he wanted to make sure that people with disabilities weren't being left out. And so I joined the company tasked with creating this new business to create upward mobility. And from my own lived experiences, I knew there was a few things that we were going to have to address. One, we were going to have to eliminate the digital divide. That meant providing digital accessibility services, because throughout my career, I felt those challenges. I couldn't apply to jobs sometimes because the websites just weren't accessible. I wasn't able to access certain information if websites and digital content wasn't accessible for me. And so I realized we needed to launch a digital accessibility practice. And so we did. And today we now have over 120 clients there. The second thing we had to do was we're going to have to change the mindsets of people and organizations. And so what we did was develop a disability inclusion training module called Disability Inclusion, Putting Untapped Talent to Work. And this was to change the mindsets of those leaders, those managers, those coworkers, to understand, the why and how to work with colleagues with disabilities. And, when you think about, our digital accessibility services and our disability inclusion services, companies are now doing what it takes to be more accessible and inclusive. And that builds up demand for talent with disabilities. So last year, we launched a workforce development program to create pathways for employment. And we have a contract with the Division of Services for the Blind to train individuals who are blind to pursue careers in tech. And so now with that, we're able to fill the supply. So we can meet that demand and supply, the supply and demand curve. And so, at Ablr, it really is simple. Our mission is to remove the barriers for people with disabilities. And it's been an amazing adventure.
Well, it certainly sounds like it's been an amazing adventure, and you and I have met for more than one lunch to discuss that amazing adventure. So I think I know some of the answers to the next question I'm going to ask, but I'm interested in seeing where we branch out. So this is definitely my favorite question.
Yeah.
What values do you feel employees with disabilities bring to the table that are often overlooked?
Yeah, this is a great question. And it's really, I think we really need to start focusing on skill-based hiring or skill-based employment. And so when we think about the skills that many people with disabilities embrace, and live on a daily basis, includes problem-solving skills, right? We're natural problem-solving skills from the day one, whether it be you, problem-solving, at Best Buy, figuring out how to get a job, going out there, you figured out a problem, you saw it, came up with a solution, you figured out how to problem solve. We do that every single day of our life. The second thing that we do is that we have empathy, right? We're empathetic, for other people's challenges and things that people go through. And I think that's an underrated skill set, that having that understanding of other people's challenges and being able to meet people where they are is a skill that every organization needs. And then I think the third piece is that, you know, our you know, the kind of the communication skills. This is something we have to work on. And that kind of thing, it really comes into your self-advocacy, you know, this whole talking about this advocacy component. I think a lot of people don't have it sometimes. I didn't have it, but once I was able to embrace it, that became a superpower. The ability to communicate and to be able to share, you know, what I needed to be to be successful is something that every organization needs, no matter if you have a disability or not. You have to be able to self-advocate. And the individuals with disabilities who do have that skill set it's a superpower, because you know what it takes to be successful. You know what it needs to be for you to be successful and you to bring your full self to the workplace. And that is, you know, you can't put a value on that. So problem solving skills, empathy, and that communication skill. And those are three things I think that every organization can benefit from. And that's what we bring to the table.
I love all those answers, and you and I are personally in alignment, and I think you're in alignment with a lot of the people on the call today. I'm going to throw you a curveball though, because this is something I'm asked a lot as someone who really pushes for self-advocacy. Some of our colleagues, our friends with IDD, have very different ways of communicating, and it's a much different mountain to climb than you and I. But they have value, they have skills, they have gifts to share. For those in the IDD community that are especially have an especially challenging mountain to climb around communication, since communication is so key, do you have any thoughts around that and their journey and how we could break through that barrier?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, communication gap can be challenging. And I think that's one of those things about being able to build relationships and to build those partnerships with allies who can help to, communicate and advocate on your behalf as well. So self-advocacy means being able to not just to advocate for yourself, but also building those relationships to be able to get the support that you need, right? To be able to help to communicate the challenges that you may have, or to be able to communicate the best ways for you to be able to do what you need to get done. And so I think there's multiple ways of that, right? I mean, when we talk about self-advocacy, we talk about that communication, we have to realize that we're not always alone, but we have to build that community around us. And I think that's another superpower that we're able to do is to bring people around us and to be able to get that piece done, whether that be with our other people in our community, whether it be friends, or whether it be coworkers. That's another way we can help break down that, and build that communication.
John, it's so great to hear you say that, and I really do hear you say that. I think so much of communication in general between human beings is nonverbal. And if the IDD community is, if not anything, is energetic and carries an energy with them and can express themselves in different ways that absolutely can be and should be understood. And what I really heard you say there was that we have allies. And one of our superpowers is the ability to have to get other human beings to rally around us and recognize our need. And so I super second that, and I really hear that. So with all those superpowers you shared, is there anything that that you haven't shared with us yet that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing this platform, because I think we have to realize that, we are always people first, right? We're people first. At the end of the day, we're people first, and we need to really focus on that. When we talk about, employment, we need to focus on what we can do. Forget about how, I feel like too often we talk about how can you do the job. You talked about, your experience at the clothing store, saying, oh, you don't fit what we look, what cool looks for us. But we need to start to shift that mindset and saying, like, really think about the abilities of people, what that unique aspect you bring to the table. And, and I think, when we celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month, now that's one of the things I want to challenge people is to attend events like this. I want you to share stories, personal stories, and, that human connection, build that empathy with others, share that, be vulnerable and explain, those challenges that we all go through, because we all need to share those stories. We need to, something I talk a lot about is proximity builds empathy. And if we can, be vulnerable and share those stories, we're going to build that new level of empathy. And then we realize that we're all people. We're all going through some challenge or some overcome barriers, and we all need to be allies, and we need allies in our life. And, and then we'll realize we're more similar than different. And if we do that, I also believe that we won't be just celebrating National Disability Impairment Month just in the month of October, but something we celebrate every day. But no, I appreciate it, Chris. I'm a fanboy of you, man, and I'm just grateful to be here.
Well, you certainly put a giant smile on my face. For those of you who are on camera or off, I hope that you put a giant smile on their faces as well. We've got some celebrations, some hand claps, and some waving on your well-deserved behalf, sir. So we you really hit the nail on the head. We really appreciate you being here, man. Thank you for sharing your perspective and your story. And you're certainly an ally for the community in North Carolina and beyond. So thank you, man.
Thank you, Chris.
Absolutely. And now we get to do our favorite part as a whole for the Self Advocate discussion series. And this speaks to what you just shared, John, because it's time to hear from our attendees. The Self Advocate discussion series exists for you, my friends, the IDD community, and we want to hear your voice loud and clear. If you haven't done so yet, I invite you, I plead for you, if able, and you have the courage to do so, I invite you to turn on your cameras so that we can see and acknowledge your lovely faces. And if you'll direct your attention to the screen, you'll see on the next slide some questions that we're going to ask today. And we're here to encourage and support you as you share in a way that makes you feel comfortable. So I also invite you to ask questions of me and John, the presenters. So you can raise your hand on the Zoom using the hand icon, or live as you unmute. And you can also ask questions in the chat. And so I'll begin by reading the questions that we've asked you to answer. And you can pick one question, or you can answer multiple questions, whatever's comfortable for you. So the questions are as follows. Number one, why is employment important? Question number two, share an employment experience or when you've tried to get employed. If you're not employed, just share something that you've attempted. Or an incoming earning opportunity. Question three, who influenced your interest or disinterest, lack of interest in employment in your life? And last question, what is one thing you learned from our speakers today? So those are our questions. And again, if you're more interested in asking questions to me or John, you're welcome to skip our prompt. This is a free-for-all for you. So feel free to jump in whenever you're ready.
I'll go first. I don't know how to raise my hand.
That's okay.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay, cool. All right. So Why is employment important to me? Employment, the reason why I am here, so I guess we'll step to number 3, who influenced my employment interest, I guess, my daughter. My daughter her name is Alex. She's nonverbal, autistic. And we go to Wingate Park Elementary in North Carolina. We are part of Mecklenburg County School District, CMS. Got it? Okay. And employment is important because, I mean, without employment, I mean, what are you going to do with your life? We all have to have a hobby. We all have to be doing something that we love to do. We need to wake up every day and we need to be doing it, even if we're not getting paid a lot of money. Who cares, right? But, you know, that's the goal. But everybody needs to have that in their life. I think that's very important. Something that I did learn today that I find very useful is what I'm going to have to look up, because things kind of went really fast because there was a lot of information that got thrown at me. But yeah, it was very emotional. But the LCI and the RTP and those corporations are here because my daughter is nonverbal. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the school district to incorporate a HQT, a highly qualified teacher in sign language. So what I've observed in my data is that Alex is able to say words that she's been able to learn how to sign. And so that right there, and changing the mindset and all of that in the employment area, like I'm taking that and I'm looking at it in the school part. And I think that if we can start and we can do that and we can bring it down to our babies in our elementary school, and we can start exposing them to that same exact format and outlook that we have for our adults, that could change things ultimately. And if we could change the mindset of some people that are in the building as well, that would be great as well. And yeah, I think and it is an honor to be here and to have you guys know my name and see my face. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Aaron, this is Chris. We appreciate you so much. It's an honor to have you here. And I heard you say some really, really awesome stuff. You reiterate the key thing, which is mindset. It's all about shifting mindset. It's all about shifting perspective. And I love you talking about exposure. I love you talking about exposure at an early level and how important it is. You talked about breaking a barrier of communication, using tools, which is super, super key. That's something that John talked about specifically. And you talked about dignity of risk and really and faith in the future if we can find the right tools and come together utilizing these tools. So man, way to just hit a home run right out of the park. Thank you so much, Aaron. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you so much. I mean, you hit it. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's folks like you who are advocating for your daughter, and it's why we do what we do. It's for people like you, and I'm so thankful for you sharing that and being vulnerable with us.
Yeah. All right. Next share, don't be shy.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize some of you in the chat. Don't make me do it. I'll do it. I'll call you out by request.
Hi, we've got two individuals from our program that would like to say something. So Lori, you can go first.
Absolutely.
I like your program, and I'm with Self Advocacy here. It's important to speak clearly. Speak for yourself.
Kathleen. Let's go Kathleen and we'll get you people.
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Lee. I'm from Billard, North Carolina. I'm my mom is Robin, having trouble with her balance and cancer and stuff. So I just need everybody at your space to please support my mom into it. It's hard for me and to my dad. So I need y'all please support that too. Thank you.
We got one more and then we'll. What would you like to say, Mr.?
Oh, I have autism, and with my disabilities, I didn't get hired for Lowe's, and what's important to me is I'm a very good gamer. Thank you.
That's a very important skill to have. Forgive, I'm going to ask for some clarification there. Did you say you did get hired at Lowe's or you did not?
I did not.
Did not. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad that you're still here, and I'm hopeful that you can continue to pursue whatever future you like.
Yeah.
Thank you all very, very much. We're always super grateful when your group joins this program. We really appreciate y'all for being here.
Yeah.
Special props for Interact. Thanks for joining.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Chris, when we were talking about the superpowers that we bring to the table, I think one that I didn't mention that I overlooked and I talk about it often is resiliency. It's that bounce back, right? So I think that gentleman, about the not getting the job at Lowe's, but not giving up, right? It's the same power that when you were told about the fashion, the clothing store, you didn't give up. And I think that's something that defines us as a community, is our resiliency to bounce back after adversity. And I'm thankful to hear that in the comments today.
Most definitely. We got that in spades, my friend. This is Chris.
Yes.
All right. Next brave sharer from the audience. Again, you're welcome to answer the questions we've presented, or you can ask a question of myself or John.
This is Melissa. Tara Mueller wrote in chat, thanks, Aaron, and thanks, Patricia, for the shout out for Disability Rights North Carolina, DRNC. We are always happy to help. Here are some specific resources for school-age parents. And she's put a link into the chat. So please copy that and use that links. And thanks again, Tara.
Yes, thank you, Tara. This is Chris, and we're going to make sure to save the chat at the end of this meeting, and I will be putting together a resource email, and I will be sure to include that link that you shared, Tara, in the resources to all of our attendees.
I'd like to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm totally into like all of that. I've already done my whole research. There's this woman, she does a day in our shoes, or something of that nature, or I can't think of it right now off the top of my head. I'm gonna have to look at it. I know exactly where it is, but anyways, I've uploaded the whole entire IEP toolkit. I know all of the abbreviations. I have everything, you name it, from the accommodations to the modifications to every type of thing that there is out there, because as a parent, you have to specify exactly what you want for your child in order for you to get it. And then you have to fight for it, because you have to have data that backs up whatever it is behind you. And then they want to give you different options before they give you what you want, to see if those things work, kind of like, the American doctor's office. And it's just kind of like, it's a continual fight. And I'm in a situation right now where I had been called, I had gone into my school during an event and without my consent, which is against my parental rights. They were putting Alex in a calm down room that had a metal supply closet in it with a trampoline that was holding the door shut and a mat that was right in front of it. And that took up over a third of the wall that was as big as the room. And then when I left, I had so many, I had so many different, communicating through. And finally I got to the principal. We had a new principal. She had never met me. And I told her that I didn't like the room. And she told me that it met CMS standards. And I told her, well, if those are CMS standards and are those your standards, then they're piss poor. And then within 48, it's the truth. They were piss poor. That's ridiculous. There's the kids that are bigger than Alex that could get seriously injured in there, and then within 48 hours, I had DSS at my house asking me if I sexually molest my children.
Oh, we're so sorry.
I'm sorry.
Right. And so, no, it's okay. So now everything happens for a reason. And that's why I'm brought myself here, right, to be able to meet with you folks, because you guys are in charge of it all. The school board knows who I am. I've shaken hands with the superintendent, Crystal. They know exactly who I am, and it's about time you guys know who I am too.
Well, I
Okay.
really thank you, Aaron, for that continued vulnerability.
But yeah,
really.
I know all about it. I know all about it. So now here I am. But that's good for, but people need to know the process and the system. Like, it would be a great idea if we had these kindergartners come in and there was a process where we spoke to the parents, because at that time I was so distraught. I was distraught and I was upset, and it would have been nice for somebody to sit me down and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to be fine. We have professionals. Don't you worry. This is the outline and this is what we're going to do. And there's none of that.
Mm.
And they have my information all the way from when my daughter was 3 years old, from her diet to her sleep pattern to her bowel movements.
Mm.
Got it?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing,
You're
Aaron.
welcome.
We really appreciate that.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I can guarantee that this council staff will be following up with you. We want to reach out and talk with you, but we want to encourage you to use that Disability Rights North Carolina resource as well. Thanks
Thank you.
again.
We've just got a couple minutes left for sharing, and definitely want to give, if there's someone who hasn't shared yet or hasn't asked a question, and it's okay if you don't want to raise your hand and share live, you can put your question in the chat. But now is the time. Again, I can't emphasize it anymore. Your voice matters. We want to hear it.
Mary Ann Haskell has put a comment in the chat that says, my daughter has put in about 5 applications for a job and she didn't even get a call back. Is there anything else we can do? She would love to work. She wants to buy others things when they eat out, and she wants to buy people Christmas gifts. Mary Ann, thank you very much for your comment, and thank you very much for your question. I know that the Council on Developmental Disability does dedicate one of our major goal areas and 3 base committees to financial asset development and employment. So if it's okay with you, we would also like to send some resources your way and maybe chat with you a little bit more and share your information with others.
Absolutely. Mary Ann, thank you for putting that in the chat. I respect and appreciate the vulnerability of that, and we look forward to following up. All right, we probably have time for one more question or share.
Can I just give a shout out to Aaron? I'm a parent of 2 kids with autism and mental health challenges, and the way you taught your child sign language, you were saying that that's what you were doing. My son was nonverbal for a long time, And that's what we did. He didn't even walk or talk till he was 3. And I just want to give you hope that he's now 6'5" and he talks all the time. It might be on his own subjects, but he talks all the time about his movies and his men, and he's a big old teddy bear. So there's hope out there. Absolutely. So.
The bigger the teddy bear, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Okay. We actually do have time for yet another share if one more person would like to share or ask a question.
Philip,
This
go ahead.
is Philip Woodward. I want to respond to Marianne. First of all, I'm wearing orange and I have a foliate background. I am hard of hearing. I wear 2 hearing aids and I read lips and I know American Sign Language. When I moved to North Carolina from Williamsburg, Virginia, I was looking for a job to apply for, and I was very interested in working for the North Carolina Division of Services for the Deaf and the Hard of Hearing. So fortunately, back in 2004, I was able to do an internship there. And after that internship ended, I worked part-time at North Carolina State University in their Disability Services for Students office in 2005, and then 2006, I saw DSDHH, Division of Services for the Deaf and the Hard of Hearing, was hiring, and so I applied and I got a job there. And I felt that my doing an internship there in 2004 and getting to know the staff might have helped. So if your daughter has an opportunity to do an internship or get to know people through a social club or something like that, that could lead to potential employment opportunities. Thank you for letting me speak.
Philip, you're absolutely right. This is Chris. If there's anything that this council and this particular series is full of, usually, I can say confidently that it is hope. And I would like to just take a moment to read Patricia Sampson's comment from the chat. She says, my sister was nonverbal until she was in her 40s. She moved in with me and we found a wonderful speech therapist willing to work with her. Please have hope. That is something that we as a community have in spades and need to hold on to in spades more than anything else. That is what we're here for. And if you need reminders of the hope, we're happy to be those reminders for each and every one of you. And with that, I'll move on to our resources, our resource page when we get a chance. So first of all, ODEP, which stands for the Office of Disability Employment Policy at the U.S. Department of Labor. I know that that is a mouthful, but underneath that, you'll see a link to INDEEM specifically, so National Disability Employment Awareness Month. What has been going on over the course of the month of October to celebrate INDEEM, but also some personal resources. And my favorite resource is the second one down, which is INDEEM Year Round, which is where they talk about where eventually they all hope to not need a month to celebrate our population because we're fully integrated into the workforce. Wouldn't that be nice? And then for those of you just starting your journey, there's a link to employment strategies and volunteer opportunities and ways to develop that network. Below that, you have Disability In, and there's a national website as well as a North Carolina chapter. And Disability In specializes in employment for persons with disabilities, and they actually have an employment portal where you can submit resumes, and they have their own series of resources, both locally and nationally. They also have a conference. And then, of course, we couldn't have John on here without putting Ablr as a website, as a resource. Definitely check out what they're doing to make companies more inclusive, particularly technology wise. And while they specialize in finding employment for the blind and sight impaired, their goal, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, is to create an inclusive environment for persons of all abilities. And there's an events page. So if you want to utilize Ablr as a network and connect with more people that are connected to them, utilize that. And then, of course, lastly, but not least, we've got the Disability Employment Services website, the Division of Vocational Rehab, that has their own series of resources. Next slide, please. I want to take the time to thank everyone here. We've got ongoing events and opportunities as our final slide. We've got SARTAC, which is the Self Advocate Resources and Technology Assistance Center, and the upcoming events. We our lunch and learns with Meet the Need. They have lunch and learns every month. Be sure to check those out. We have a link to that. The Hope Inclusive Housing Summit, if housing is important to you, is November 13th. And November 15th is our upcoming next self-advocate discussion series. And as it is Thanksgiving season, the topic is being thankful. So I want to thank my fellow speaker, John Samual. I want to thank our captioner. I want to thank our Spanish interpreters. I want to thank our sign language interpreters and all staff that make this event possible. Thank you, Melissa, for facilitating, working so hard behind the scenes, and interviewing me. And we especially want to thank our self-advocates for being here today. Thank you, Aaron, and everyone else who shared. Thank you for those who listened and were present. We hope we've inspired you today, and we hope you'll join us for our next self-advocate discussion series on November 13th. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day.
And thank you, Chris, for being a wonderful facilitator. Goodbye, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the day. All right, so John, if you'll stick around for just a second, the staff usually